what would you say then to people, given the importance of understanding the character of God, who may be confused when they read the Old Testament and feel like they are listening to a much more wrathful God,
Yeah.
a God that is,
Full of retribution rather than love.
exactly.
Well, first of all, I think you do find elements of God's love in the Old Testament records, but you've got to remember that we are taking God's interaction with the house of Israel over thousands of years, and we're truncating this story into just a few pages, and we don't see the loving interaction with his prophets, for example, as much as we do in modern. We're going to see his loving interaction with the good people of the house of Israel. The Old Testament is somewhat shaped towards helping us understand why God that the covenant wasn't as active in certain eras of Old Testament history as it was, say, in the New Testament, because a lot's getting chopped out. I think it has at least something to do with it. And then there is the issue of how many miraculous events occur in the period of the Old Testament, and how many times those miraculous events are discounted or rejected altogether. And so you've again got that you have to provide an explanation of why things don't go well with the house of Israel. And I think some of it, maybe not a lot, but at least some, has to do with the way the Old Testament has been translated based on theological presupposition. For example, if I see if I can give you an example here, I may even have a quote that we could use here. We all are familiar with the Hebrew term Elohim. Elohim is, grammatically speaking, it's a masculine plural noun. It's plural. So how in the world does it come to be translated as, in the singular, as God? The Hebrew of Genesis 1:1 literally begins, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashemayim ve'et haaretz. So the third word in is the word Elohim. And how is it translated? It's in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. If you look at some of the earliest rabbis before and after the time of Jesus, they say that should be translated differently. Okay? And the way they say it should be translated is not in the beginning, God created it, but in the beginning of God's creating, the heavens and earth were formless and void, or even more radically, in the beginning of the gods creating, the heavens and earth were formless and void. And so the way things are translated based on theological presuppositions had something to do with messing up, our understanding of certain key doctrines. In fact, even the name, this is I think something that listeners would be interested in. Even the name Elohim, gods, gets what's the right term? It gets mistranslated in one of the Psalms. God has made him a little lower than the angels. The word angel is the way the word Elohim is translated. The original term in Hebrew is Elohim. Now, so really what it should say is God has made him a little lower than the gods, or has not. Let me back and say a little lower than the gods, meaning that there is potential in human beings to be like the gods, and it's this mortal fallen world that has caused man to act lower than the way that the gods act. So that's a very long answer to a very short question, but I think all of those factors, and when you talk about the way Scripture is transmitted, is very complicated. Joseph Smith said something that I think is provable, and that he says, what we have in the Bible is the result of careless translators, or translators more asleep than awake, and so that's part of the reason, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's Charles Spurgeon said as well, see the love of God in the bruises of his son, and I think that always brings it back to basics for me of looking at those acts of love without honing in on specific political events going on in the Old Testament sometimes, and I think that's very wise counsel.